significance in here because it's actually nice to have open space that is unprogrammed. However, of course, there's a pathway loop network, gazebos, lookouts, benches, all the traditional amenities for a nice passive park area. But then coming this way, we start getting more active again. These will be tennis courts, asphalt paved tennis courts, free and open access. Over time, the community association may need to come up with even a simple sign or protocol or ask us to prepare something for you to say an hour per person or whatever you want. It's just, we have these all over the city and they tend to self-regulate very well. People tend to not be too greedy when they see people waiting and waiting and waiting. You finish your game, you move on. So more paths and open space. This is where we mentioned about Jeff doing the turnaround. We've shown it here. But then as you go over this way, we're actually including the whole fitness circuit as well. And the big difference from what's happening up here versus the community park this way is that this is less child-oriented. It's not anti-children, it's just more like you can go for a more peaceful opportunity up here. Let the dog run loose, play some tennis, do your fitness without being overrun by the play structure, the soccer field, the splash pad, all the other activities going on. So that, from our perspective, gives you an incredibly well-balanced park delivery for recreation for all ages, all types, all amenities. So that's what we finished off with. And then from there, we go and we start to do some more technical studies and we go into the construction drawings. But before I get to the construction drawings, I'll just update you. We've completed our we have not final draft, but near final draft of our species at risk assessment. So anytime we go to build something, there's requirements from the province that we analyze. Is there going to be any impact on the environment, on animals that live there, on what is already happening there? We need to make sure that we're going to cause no harm to the environment. The species at risk one, you've heard the debates about turtles, for instance. That's exactly what we do. We have biologists come out, we look for all of these things. What we found is in this park area, there's not really those giant concerns you've heard on other projects that can derail them. There are some trees that we want to protect, and you've all seen them. There's some tall white pines, for instance. So we want to keep away from them and allow them to continue having a good and healthy...
75, 80 years old?
Yeah, they're giant. And so they're identified and they're protected, and they will remain protected so that we don't harm them. One thing that we went and did was up here, only about a third, approximately, the area was kind of mowed grass. And then as you went further back, it became taller, meadow-like stuff, scrubby grass and whatnot. So our species at risk plan, that is habitat for a protected bird species, sorry, potential habitat for a protected bird species called the bobolink. In Ontario, it's a protected species. In Ottawa, they have greater habitat and greater presence, but in other parts of the province, it's very important to protect it. But what we noticed here was that there was no evidence of them being here. And the biologists spent time, reviewed we've got a list of every kind of bird that was spotted or evidence of things. Like, even saw deer tracks, for instance.
Any coyote tracks?
Didn't see any coyote tracks.
We've seen them right
Oh, I'm sure they're here. They're everywhere. But he didn't see them, so if he doesn't spot it, he says there's potential for habitat. Anyway, so we actually came in earlier this fall and cut down that meadow. And the reason why is because that is nesting habitat for the bobolink in the spring. If we don't cut it down now, then we bring out the biologist in the spring, and if he finds one, we shut down for the whole nesting period, which goes through July. So, as a prevention measure, it's not anti-bobolink, it's more like pro-project. We actually remove that habitat now when it's safe to do so, when it's not nesting season, so that when we come in the spring, the biologist does like a quick 5-minute run around the site. Yep, the birds move on. Because that's why you take out the habitat now. You actually would see that all over the city right now. Anyway, so from a species at risk perspective, we're in good shape. From one of the other studies we do is, this one was two-part because we brought them in. It is a high slope. There is water below. So we do a slope stability study, and then we also do a geotechnical study. The geotechnical it actually provides us great advice. You have a clay soil, it has this drainage characteristic, so if you're going to build a tennis court and you want it to last 30 years, you need to design the foundation, the gravel layers and all that of the tennis court to a certain depth. Same thing, we're planting gazebos. If you're gonna have gazebos, the bearing capacity of these soils is this, so design your foundation for your gazebo to a certain depth and thickness. And I know this area is all clay, and we know there's issues. If I go all the way back over to Bilberry Creek and slope stability issues there, it carries through. So one thing we learned through our geotech is that slope stability, and it'll show up on these plans, is top of slope, is past top of slope. So we can't go build right to the top of slope. We gotta step back a certain amount because there's a risk of future potential erosion. So for safety reasons, we pull it back in, and our circle here, for instance, is now slightly smaller than the circle here, because this is in conceptual design, we haven't done these studies, but all we had to do was kind of pull it in a little.
How many feet from top of that, or how many meters from top of that?
It varies, it depends on where you're at. Generally, 6 meters.
6 to 8.
Yeah, it's general, but because the characteristics of the soils and what's happening in the ravine tells you where your setbacks are all the way at the top. And so the engineers come and they give us our requirements, and we design now accordingly. So what you see here now is the 60% plans. This is where we are actually getting much more firm, because we have our studies, we have all the things. You translate, 30% is take the concept, put it on a plan, and send that off to the folks to give you your final studies. If you're gonna build a gazebo here, here's what you need to do, etc. So we've had to pull in a little bit because of the study, but everything that we showed originally is still on the plan. I have no reason to believe that we won't be able to accomplish everything that we said we would do. The exact location of the path. Please never compare a concept to a final, but the pathways, all the things we said would be in there, it's all still there.
At the moment, how long is the path?
I haven't measured. I'll send a note. These are architectural and engineering drawings, so he just presses a button. I can get that and forward that to you. Didn't even think of that, I'm sorry. And it's actually a good idea, because there's places where I've put mile markers, so to speak, because walking circuits sometimes really appreciate those.
That'll be my retirement walking.
Hey, you know, I've put those in because I've had people call me to say, my doctor has ordered me to walk, I've had a heart attack, I'm recovering, I need to walk, and I need to know how much I'm walking. And for the cost of a small little sign, just slap them in, it's nothing. Anyway, so we've come along, and these are just kind of the more detailed stuff we're working through right now. Everything is still in order, and everything is still online. We are roughly, per my original milestones, for where I should be right now, we are behind by about 2 weeks. Some of our studies took longer than planned. However, we built a 3-month wiggle room into the schedule. So I have no concern about 2 weeks, because you build contingencies not just in your funding, you also build it into your schedule. We're well within original plan schedule for a tender this winter and a construction starting this spring. My next big risk that I'm carrying, and I don't consider it a significant risk, but it's one because it involves outside parties, is a final RBCA approval, which is why I do the top slope, why we show, demonstrate where the erosion concerns are and all of that. So RBCA approval I don't consider to be a significant risk. It's just if there is a slowdown in their office, it ends up in a slowdown in our office. And the other one is Hydro One. Here's the transmission lines here. They have towers. We will need an approval from Hydro One for working within their easement lines. Those are crystal ball at best for me right now. We've had issues back and forth, but this is very minor and not so intrusive. If I was saying, trying to put a tennis court here, for instance, we would have a complex and complicated discussion. But because it's only pathways, there is no physical installation other than surface. We're not predicting this to be a problem.
If you have any problems with Hydro One, please let us know. We know somebody who can help us.
Yes, and I've learned.
Great job.
It took me 3 months to get my Hydro
Yeah.
approval.
Yeah.
And I just kept calling them quite often to harass them. And it's surprising how long it took, but we eventually got it. But it's one thing that's out of our control.
Yeah.
And we just kind of keep at them and keep calling them and remind them
And
Every project that I've spoken to people about, not only in Cardinal Creek, but other parts, there's an issue with the delays. from-
Yeah. so because of the we're designing nothing complicated, nothing special, nothing that we don't already have throughout the city,
And
we're proceeding as we have with every other design of similar stuff in Hydro Corridor throughout the city. The fact that it might sit on a pile on a desk for a while is not something I'm carrying as a terrible risk, because we're so far ahead of the game. The application of Hydro One goes in next week. With that application going in, and even using Jeffrey's numbers, 3 months, well, we're not actually looking for construction until April or May next year. You see, we've worked, because of the way we coordinated things, we have those contingencies within our schedule already. So I'm not carrying it as a significant risk. It's just one of those ones that, for a bureaucrat like me, it's a pain in the butt because I'm not in control and I would just like to get it out of my way.
You do have similar walkways throughout, like
Yeah.
those.
And they can take months.
Oh, they took,
months,
okay, good to know.
months. Councillor Blay could explain to you his frustrations
Fine.
with some of the Transor Lane stuff he was working on, which was, it's appalling to me, but then again, I don't know anything about the Hydro One world. I'm just trying to go halfway in some cases. So from milestones, that's where I'm at. Now, at 60%, we progress from Class A, B, C, D construction estimates. At 60%, we're getting refined, so I can reduce my contingencies. Right now, construction cost only, so that doesn't include the studies, the soft costs, all of that, we're with a 20% contingency coming in at just under $900,000. We're on budget, as far as we know. As we get more detail from our studies, we can refine those numbers even better. By the time we go out to tender, that contingency is often reduced to 10 or 15%, depending on the nature of the work. And then, of course, the tender is what tells you what it's actually worth. But we do bring in cost consultants. It's called price and quantity survey. And these are experts who know exactly how much it costs to buy gravel in Holland, for instance. So they go through our plan.
So Jeff, is there any, how close are you to the 1.3 million? Will there be any, do you expect